Understanding and setting standards now is essential to shaping our not so distant future world to be a rights respecting one. We're lucky to have up first Sabine Malik, a non-resident fellow with us here at the DFR Lab and head of government affairs at Thumbtack, to discuss the geopolitical impact and significance of the gaming industry. After Sabine, Britton Heller, counsel for global business and human rights at Foley Hoag, will talk about the human rights considerations of artificial and virtual reality technologies that are already in circulation today. I'm going to turn it over first to Sabine.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to be part of a conversation today talking about an industry that doesn't get a lot of the usual suspects around the table when we think about digital tech. But we're going to talk about digital gaming today. It truly is the juggernaut industry quietly being shaped by geopolitical forces. Next slide, please. Today, I'm going to go through with you some of the elements of what we need to learn about this particular industry and how geopolitical forces are shaping it. We'll go through the gaming industry landscape, the future of gaming technology, global industrial strategies for gaming and content producers, and finally, some risks for the global industry. The thing I want to stress very much, next slide, please. The thing I want to stress in this particular talk is that I believe that part of what we have found with a lot of folks that talk about the gaming industry is that they don't recognize its size and its scale. And what I wanted to convey to you today is that basically this is $1 million industry that is playing an increasingly important role in shaping the worldview of its participants and the politics of their societies. It is time to really understand that this industry and the players are in a growing contested space to shape perceptions and worldviews about the world. Next slide, please. The gaming business model basically has 3 segments in the global gaming industry. Real money games, examples such as online gambling, casual games such as Candy Crush, and esports such as Battle Royale games. Now, in this particular talk, I'm going to focus on casual games and esports in particular. Next slide, please. The thing I want to hone in on this particular slide is that by looking at the numbers, there is a significant growth pattern that has occurred in the last few years for gaming. But even more significant in the last year, the biggest driver has been the heightened interest due to the COVID-19 lockdown measures, in which folks were looking for a lot of content to do and a lot of content to engage with while being at home. In general, just to give you a size and scale and scope for this industry, the market size is larger than movies and music. And so as a total for this year, we're looking at a direct revenue and indirect revenue model of over $300 billion. Next slide, please. Another thing that we're sort of looking at when we think about the numbers is actually where are we seeing a lot of this growth? Where are the global games market? And truly Asia is in the lead. After Asia, we see North America, and then the biggest market after that is Europe, then Latin America, and the Middle East. And what's interesting is the type of games that people are playing in these regions. In China, it's Honor of Kings. In India, it's PUBG Mobile. In the UK, it's a soccer game, FIFA 21. And in Brazil, it's Free Fire. Again, looking at another slice of the data, we can see that the global player market in terms of the size is 2.7 billion people. 400 million new gamers are expected by the end of 2023. The profiles of these new joiners are also changing. 60% are women, 30% are under 25, and 1/3 identify as non-white. And men and women are equally playing mobile games. Next slide, please. What is interesting to see is that fundamentally, we are in a place where a lot of folks are seeing very rapid change in the way that the industry is slicing and the way that global players are suggesting they want to be engaged with this particular industry. Next slide, please. So the gaming population further broken down. If you look at hours spent, you can see that 16 hours a week are spent in playing, 8 hours a week watching, 6 hours a week interacting in game forums and with different communities, which is a big change overall ever since COVID, that this number has increased, and more you're seeing folks engage with their communities through gaming. Women on average, 36 years old, who play video games, 50 people who are older and the age range of 50 plus are also increasingly a big chunk of folks that are engaging in this particular industry. Also, we are seeing that more than 3 to 4 Gen Z males claim to regularly watch video games as esports, and that's a 25% increase over millennials. Next slide, please. So the future of gaming, where do we see the trends? We see that game streaming will increase. We will see mixed reality games becoming more and more of the segment of the population that plays games with mixed reality. Content platforms in terms of gaming becoming more and more of a destination where people want to share content, and global esports. Next slide, please. The thing that I want to really hone in on for this section of the conversation is that truly there has been some industrial policy for gaming. And I think a lot of folks look at it as this is just a China issue, but really, truly, that's not the case. And in fact, you could see that Korea and Japan were leaders in trying to create what they saw was soft power and diplomacy by creating content. China has since 2001 actually embedded gaming in its 5-year plan, and again in September 2020 in its guiding opinions on expanding investment in strategic emerging industries. Also, the UAE has now, this year, made gaming one of its main hubs as a support system for game developers, players, consumers, and businesses in Abu Dhabi in terms of the free zones that they have. And this initiative will be bringing more of a regional focus to make sure that gaming becomes a regional industry and has a regional focus, especially on esports. So as you can see, this is a growing area of interest by a lot of countries to look at what they will do in this industry. Next slide, please. What I want to focus on is what I think for a lot of folks has been probably the first time that they saw national security and gaming come together. And that is the case study of Tencent, China investment, and the CFIUS committee in the United States. The CFIUS process back in 2018 increased the jurisdiction of the committee to review transactions by foreign companies retroactively for non-controlling investments if the companies involved maintain or collect sensitive personal data of US citizens. What that meant is that basically as political interest started to become more of a center of gravity for the conversation around investments in the United States, particularly under the last administration, the CFIUS committee then began to look into whether or not Epic Games and Riot Games were handling the personal data of their user constituents and whether it was a national security risk because of their Chinese ownership. Again, just to put this in context, Epic Games is owned 40% by Tencent, whereas Riot has a 20% stake, Tencent has a 20% stake. And in sort of looking at this conversation, what has brought some complexity further to the whole situation is that there is a process, but since 2020, Tencent has been negotiating risk mitigation measures with CFIUS to see if it can keep its investments. And so for other investment opportunities and looking at this environment, there is developing complexity in terms of not only foreign direct investment, but also with regards to China and the United States relationship when it comes to this industry in particular. Next slide, please. As you can see, Epic took a different stance with regard to some of its conversations that were perceived to be mostly driven by thinking about China's stances on free speech. Whereas Blizzard, it was dealing with a different situation when it dealt with a Hong Kong player and its winnings. But the bottom line is that it was very interesting to see how both companies were treated differently, even though the stakes were different for each company. Next slide, please. To close out, basically, the bottom line is that we need a path forward. Gaming is not just a small niche industry that is basically by playing games by young individuals around the world. More and more populations are playing. 2.7 billion people around the world are engaged and playing in the industry or have actual sizable amounts of investment in the industry. So we need to think about a path forward and we need a strategic plan. We need global content protections. We need global recognition that content industries are now at the forefront of national discussions about science and innovation. we need global trade rules enforced, and we need data norms and standards for mixed reality tech. Thank you very much for letting me present to you basically a small industry that truly is a niche industry for some, but when you look at the numbers, it is truly a juggernaut. Thank you very much.